Welcome to Restoria. I'm Jenna, and this is your cozy corner for gentle bedtime stories. Each night, I'll share peaceful tales made to quiet your thoughts and guide you softly into sleep. So settle in, get comfy, and let the story carry you into rest. The story tonight is called The Knitting Club, Chapter 1. The Room Beyond the Stacks. The town library rests quietly at the end of Maple Street, its red brick facade softened by ivy that clings with patient devotion. Inside, the scent of old paper and dusted shelves greets each visitor like an old friend, warm and familiar. On this particular evening, the sky outside is already folding into dusk, that soft lavender hour when shadows lengthen and the world holds its breath before night. Helen pushes through the heavy front door, a gust of chilly wind following at her heels. She's not here for any particular book, nor any pressing need. Only a vague ache of restlessness, the kind that asks to be soothed, not solved. Her coat is too thin for the weather, and her cheeks are pinked from the cold. She moves slowly past the reading room, where an elderly man dozes upright in a wingback chair, and past the shelves of old paperbacks, their cracked spines lined up like quiet soldiers. She trails a finger along the edge of the shelves as she walks, the dust rising in faint motes where her touch stirs it. Then she sees it, a sliver of golden light spilling from an open doorway at the far back corner of the library. Drawn by the glow and the faint sound of voices, she steps closer. Just inside, she finds a little room tucked away from the rest of the world. The walls are lined with books, but none are strictly in order. Some lean like old friends whispering to one another. Others rest stacked on top of one another in gentle rebellion against the system. There's a sagging couch near one window, a collection of mismatched chairs circling a low table, and on that table a teapot gently steaming beside a plate of sugar-dusted biscuits. 4 women sit around the circle, needles in hand, yarn in laps. The clack of knitting needles is soft and steady, like rain on a rooftop. No one looks up right away. Then Ruth turns. Her face is all warmth and weathered kindness, like a favorite quilt. Her cardigan is the color of oat milk, soft and slightly pilled from wear, and her eyes are pale as early morning fog. She pats the empty seat beside her without fuss. "No need to be good," she says. "Just join." Ellen hesitates only a moment, then slips into the seat. The cushions sigh under her, and the air is scented with bergamot and something buttery from the biscuit. The quiet of the room wraps around her like a shawl, and for a moment she feels the oddest sensation, as if she stepped into the memory of something gentle. "This is Marge," Ruth says, nodding to a woman in 2 scarves, one striped and one floral. "That's June. She knits the tiniest hats you've ever seen. And Mrs. Alder, she doesn't say much, but she's a wonder with a pair of needles." The others glance up and offer gentle smiles. No introductions needed beyond the hum of shared space. Marge's needles move at a leisurely pace, her fingers thick but sure. June has a neat little bundle of pastel yarns beside her, each one carefully wound like candy. And Mrs. Alder, silent and sharp-eyed, works with a speed that is almost mesmerizing. Ruth pulls a ball of pale blue yarn from her bag and hands Ellen a pair of extra needles. "Just hold them for now. Let your hands find the rhythm." Elin obeys, awkwardly at first. The needles feel unfamiliar, the yarn delicate in her fingers. She holds her breath more than she needs to, but no one watches her too closely. The room holds its quiet rhythm, needles clicking, tea being poured, the occasional biscuit crumbling softly in someone's hand. They speak in fragments, a memory about a favorite coat, soft at the elbows and smelling faintly of lavender. A cat that waits by the garden gate every afternoon, meowing at no one in particular. A scarf that turned out far too long and was worn with theatrical flair anyway. Ellen listens more than she talks, letting the slow current carry her. She doesn't notice the moment her shoulders begin to ease, or when her breath starts to match the cadence of the room. A soft exhale as her hands begin to mimic the motions around her. A hesitant loop, a gentle tug. By the time her yarn begins to resemble something vaguely square, the lamplight has deepened into amber and the window panes reflect only the interior glow. Outside, the night has fully arrived, but here time feels suspended. One by one, the women begin to gather their things. Projects folded, bags rustling, teacups stacked gently. The evening has passed in the hush of companionship. "You'll come again?" Ruth asks as she ties a loose knot in her yarn. Elin nods, the answer already tucked in her chest like something precious. Because sometimes comfort doesn't shout or shine. Sometimes it's just a warm room at the edge of the day and the quiet welcome of being invited to stay. Chapter 2. The Basket of Leftover Yarn. The following Thursday, twilight gathers early, draping the town in a shawl of soft grays and violet shadows. Elin walks a little faster this time. There's a purpose to her steps now, a quiet anticipation that thrums just beneath her ribs. Her breath clouds gently in front of her, and her hands stay tucked in her coat pockets until she reaches the library's wide wooden doors. Inside, the warmth is immediate. The usual hush greets her, a kind of reverence for quiet thought. But Ellen moves with more certainty now, past the checkout desk and deeper into the familiar maze of books. Her fingers brush the same shelves, her feet take the same path, and there again is that golden spill of light. The knitting room glows just as she remembered. Tonight, there's a new kind of comfort in the way the light pools around the table, in the scent of lemon biscuits instead of sugar-dusted ones, in the tea steeping with orange peel and cloves. The cushions seem even softer. The teapot steams more lazily, like it knows it has all the time in the world. Ruth is already there, her needles tapping a gentle rhythm. She looks up as Elin enters, and her smile is not one of surprise, but of welcome fulfilled. Back again, she says, not as a question. Elin nods, sliding her coat from her shoulders. She's wearing a sweater tonight, soft and well loved, the sleeves pulled over her hand. The seat beside Ruth is open. Elin takes it without hesitation. As she settles in, the warmth from the seat seems to wrap up her spine, loosening something in her chest. On the low table between them sits a wide woven basket filled with leftover yarn. Bits and bobs, strands of all colors, plum and sage, buttery cream, a few sparkled with gold thread. The ends are frayed, the bowls half used, each one a remnant of something once larger. Ruth nudges it toward her. Choose what calls to you, she murmurs. Everything has a second life here. Elin reaches in, her fingers moving slowly over the textures, silkier ones that whisper, rougher wools that hum. She settles on a gentle heather gray, its softness steadying. Ruth nods approvingly and helps her cast on again, patient and quiet. This time, Elin's hands are less hesitant. Marge is working on something colorful tonight. Stripes of mint and rose and indigo, wide enough to be a shawl. She hums a little under her breath, an old tune that Ellen doesn't recognize. but feels as if she's known all her life. June has brought a small basket of finished baby hats, each one small enough to cradle in a palm. She lines them up on the windowsill like pastel confections, patting each with a kind of fondness. Mrs. Alder, as ever, says nothing, but she offers Elin a biscuit from a tin shaped like a robin. Her hands are swift, her movements fluid, and her expression unreadable, yet gentle. Elin accepts her smile, shy but genuine. Around her, the conversation floats. My sister's roses bloomed in November once. The radiator clicks at night like it's thinking. I dreamt of my mother's kitchen last night. It smelled of cinnamon and rain. The words drift around Ellen like falling leaves, soft and slow. She knits clumsily, but it's less clumsy than before. Her hands begin to understand the pattern, the rise, the pull, the slide. A lull comes, as gentle as a blanket pulled over tired legs. No one rushes to fill it. Even silence has its rhythm here. The fire in the corner stove crackles low. A breeze rattles faintly at the window pane. Ruth pours more tea, her hands steady, her eyes soft. You know, she says softly, most of these yarns are stories. Ellen looks up. Every piece used to be part of something. A sweater for someone's birthday, a blanket that got too big, a mitten that lost its pair. Ruth gestures to the basket. They're leftovers, sure, but they're also beginnings. Elin looks down at her small grey row. It's uneven, lopsided in places, but it's hers, and it's becoming something real, something slow and earned. They knit like that for a while, not in silence, but in stillness. Each breath is unhurried, each stitch a quiet promise. Time seems to soften around them. When the clock chimes softly from somewhere deeper in the library, the knitters begin to stir. Teacups are emptied, yarn is wound back into balls. The warmth remains, thick in the air. It clings gently to their coats, to their fingertips, like something treasured. As Elin pulls on her coat, Ruth touches her elbow gently. There's always more in the basket, she says. Plenty to go around. Outside, the night is brisk and blue, but Ellen walks slower this time. Her pockets are empty, but her heart is not. And beneath her coat, the edge of her uneven knitting just peeks from her bag, grey and hopeful, with stories yet to tell. Chapter 3. The Quiet Rose. A week slides by, and Thursday returns with a hush of frost across the sidewalks and a sky the color of dove feathers. The town moves slowly in this weather. Boots leave crisp impressions in the thin dusting of snow, and breath clouds the windows of the little bakery near the bus stop. The world seems muffled, wrapped in layers of wool and silence. Eden's steps crunch lightly as she approaches the library. She's earlier than usual. The doors are still unlocked, and a few readers drift between the stacks, their jackets hanging from the backs of chairs. Somewhere near the back, a radio plays faint classical music, notes trailing like steam through the aisles. The back room is waiting. She pauses just before the threshold, holding for a moment to the silence that hangs between the shelves. Then she steps inside. The room is already warm, the little stove in the corner humming. There's a faint floral scent in the air tonight, chamomile, or maybe something from a satchel tucked behind the tea tins. The windows are fogged at the corners, and the lights wear knitted cozies like soft little hats. Eden is the first to arrive. She chooses her seat, the one beside Ruth, though Ruth isn't here yet, and gently sets her knitting bag on the floor. From it, she pulls the grey square she's been working on. It's a little longer now, a little more even. The yarn slips through her fingers with less effort, her needles moving with a quiet grace that surprises her. Outside the room, the library's soft shuffle continues. Pages turning, a cough, the low creak of the floor. Somewhere, a chair is pulled back with the careful hush of someone not wanting to disturb. Inside, Ellen breathes. The rhythm she found last week returns like a familiar melody. Knit, knit, purl, a gentle give, a careful loop. She feels it settling in her muscles, not just emotion, but a kind of meditation. The door opens behind her with the softest click. Ruth enters first, her cheeks pink from the cold. She carries a fresh thermos and a small tin of something that smells like lemon shortbread. She nods when she sees Ellen already knitting. "Look at you," she says, her voice low and fond. "Started without us." Ellen smiles. "Just couldn't wait." Her voice is quieter here, even when she feels bold. One by one, the others arrive. Marge with her mismatched mittens and a skein of yarn so bright it seems to hum. She sets it down like something sacred. June with a thermos of her own and a knitted pouch full of buttons, which she opens carefully as if revealing secrets. Mrs. Alder, quiet and swift, nodding once before settling into her corner, her needles already clicking before her coat is fully unbuttoned. The room fills slowly with the soft sounds of settling in chairs, creaking, zippers drawn back, the rustle of yarn finding its place. A breath of steam escapes the teapot. The biscuit tin opens with a gentle pop. There's less talking tonight. Not silence exactly, but a quieter kind of togetherness. Each woman slips into her rhythm, the needles dancing, the yarn flowing through fingers like water over river stones. Time stretches. Elin finds herself watching the others as much as she knits. The way Marge smiles to herself every now and then. The way June taps her finger to her lip before changing colors. The way Mrs. Alder knits with a speed that never looks rushed. The way Ruth sips her tea like it's part of the pattern. Ruth speaks only once that evening. Some days are for stories, she says. Some are just for Rose. Ellen nods. She understands. There is something nourishing in the repetition, the quiet making. The hours unfold gently, unmarked by urgency. When tea is poured, it is warm and sweet. When the biscuits are passed, no one counts how many they take. No one checks the clock. Time is measured only by the growth of yarn. Elan Square grows, not quickly, but steadily. Each row a small comfort, each stitch a quiet tether. And when it is time to leave, when the room grows dim and the lamplight softens into dusk, Elin gathers her things with the calm of someone who is shared in something whole, something quiet and lasting. Outside, the frost has thickened, but inside her pocket, her fingertips remember the motion. Knit, knit, purl, and her heart carries the hush of quiet rose. Chapter 4. A Stitch of Memory. The next Thursday is damp and silvered, a mist hanging low over the rooftops like a sigh. Rain patters gently on the library's windows, more whisper than storm, and the streets wear a sheen that catches the glow of street lamps like candlelight. Puddles mirror tree branches above, trembling with each passing drop. Elin arrives with an umbrella, its fabric flecked with tiny droplets. She pauses just inside the doorway to shake off the wet and slip her coat from her shoulders. Her boots leave soft, dark impressions on the carpet as she makes her way past the shelves. Everything feels muted, the damp air, the softened footfalls, the quiet turn of pages from distant corners of the library. Tonight, she carries a different bag, smaller, navy blue, with a loop of yarn already peeking out from the zipper. She walks with a familiarity now, her shoulders looser, her steps slower, not from reluctance, but from comfort. She savors the path to the back room like one might savor the final steps toward a warm kitchen. The knitting room is softly lit. The teapot sits on its usual trivet, its spout gently steaming. A plate of oat biscuits dusted with nutmeg rests beside it, and the room carries the gentle scent of wool and old wood. The lamp in the corner has been turned lower, casting long, soft shadow. Marge is already seated, winding a skein of deep forest green around her wrist. She looks up with a grin that crinkles the corners of her eyes. Got here just before the downpour, she murmured. June is folding a tiny cardigan with buttons shaped like duck. She tucks it carefully into a paper-lined basket, then begins sorting a neat row of wool skeins by shade. Mrs. Alder hums quietly, a rare sound, as she adjusts a pattern spread open on her lap. Her hands still move with swift grace, her fingers deft and sure, even in the hush of thought. Ruth isn't there yet. Elin slips into her usual seat, places her bag beside her, and draws out her square. It's grown again, enough now that it folds over itself with a gentle weight. She takes a breath, inhales the damp and the tea and the firewood, and begins to knit. The rhythm comes easily. Her hands move as though they've always known this knit pearl loop slide. Each stitch falls into place, a quiet part of a growing whole. Her shoulders drop, her breath deepens, a soft voice breaks the stillness. I remember teaching my daughter this stitch, Marge says, not looking up from her yarn. She was so small, her hands kept tangling the yarn, but she was so proud of her first crooked scarf. June smiles faintly. I taught mine too. She knitted for her dolls for years. Mrs. Alder doesn't speak, but her knitting slows slightly, as if she's listening with her entire body. Her needles rest for a breath, then resume with a steadier rhythm. Elin listens too. She doesn't have stories like theirs. Not yet. But something in her chest shifts, not envy, but longing, quiet and round-edged. the kind of longing that feels like the start of something a few minutes back. The door opens and Ruth steps in, brushing light rain from her sleeves. She carries a bundle wrapped in a pale blue cloth. Her smile is calm as always, but there's something reflective in her eyes. She walks slowly, as if holding something more than just the cloth. She sets the bundle on the table and unwraps it carefully. Inside is a blanket, worn and soft with use, stitched from dozens of squares, no two quite the same. My mother made this, she says, taught me to knit with these colors. Every time I look at it, I remember how her hands moved, how she'd hum while she worked. The room stills. Aileen leans forward slightly. The squares are faded, but beautiful, a mosaic of quiet memories held in wool. Pale yellow beside lavender, a rust red patch against cool teal. Some rough with age, others soft with wear. Edges that curl slightly, places where the stitching loosens but holds on. Ruth folds it again gently and places it beside her. Just thought it might want to be here tonight. The room settles back into motion. Ellen knits. Her fingers falter once, then find their rhythm again. She doesn't speak, but she thinks of her own hands, how they've changed in just a few weeks. How they now carry something steady, something passed along. When the evening winds to its close and the knitting is tucked away and teacups emptied, Elin touches her square now large enough to cover her lap and wonders if one day it too will be something remembered. Outside, the rain has softened to a mist, and Aylin walks home with a quiet weight of stories warming her hands. Each droplet on her umbrella sounds like a stitch, each step a thread, drawing her gently forward. Chapter 5. The pattern emerges. It's the kind of evening where the wind doesn't howl, but murmurs brushing against windows, curling under door frames, rustling dried leaves that have clung long past their season. The library is quieter than usual. A few lamps are dimmed, and the scent of wood polish lingers faintly in the air, as if someone has just passed through, tending to every surface with care. Somewhere, a clock ticks gently, marking time in soft, measured beat. Ellen arrives in a scarf she made herself. It's not perfect, the edges dip slightly. One end is longer than the other, but it's warm and soft and entirely hers. The wool is heather gray, like a square, and when she unwinds it, she feels as though she's unwrapping something personal, a quiet accomplishment folded in yarn. It still smells faintly of the lavender sachet she keeps in her drawer. She touches it once, absent-mindedly, before tucking it into her coat pocket. The knitting room greets her like it always does, with warmth, with light, with the feeling of being tucked gently inside something safe. The kettle is already hissing softly. There's cinnamon tonight in the biscuits, and a small bowl of dried apricots sits beside them, their scent just faintly sweet. A new shawl drapes the back of one of the chairs hand-knit, surely with a pattern that ripples like water. On the sill, someone has placed a small jar of lavender sprigs, their scent mingling gently with the wall. Tonight, the group feels even more like a circle, not just a collection of people, but something connected, quietly bonded by repetition and care. There is a rhythm now that is not spoken, but known, like a song without words, passed down by feel, like breath shared in harmony. Ruth arrives with a new ball of yarn for Ellen, a dusky rose color that makes her think of old postcards and faded quilts. Thought you might be ready to begin a new piece, she says gently, handing it over like a small invitation. Ellen presses the yarn to her palm. It's soft and unexpectedly warm. Thank you, she says, her voice carrying the weight of more than just words. She sets aside her nearly finished square and starts to cast on again. This time, her hands do not hesitate. The motion feels like breath, familiar, steady, whole. She finds herself smiling without meaning to. The others work quietly. March has begun a blanket, bold blocks of color stitched together like a song. Each row, she adds, seems to tell a different verse. June is knitting buttons into a length of ribbon, a whim, she says, just to see what will come of it. She chuckles softly when one of the buttons pops loose and rolls across the floor. Mrs. Alder, swift and exacting, has begun something in deep navy, her needles moving like water. She wears her brooch tonight, small, silver, shaped like a sparrow. It catches the lamplight when she shifts. Her hands seem to know the pattern before she looks down. They speak, but only occasionally, not because there's nothing to say, but because nothing must be said. Ruth hums softly. The kettle purrs. Aileen counts quietly to herself as she begins her second row. The sound of knitting fills the space like gentle rain. The rustle of yarn, the quiet clink of cups, the small comfort of presence. Halfway through the evening, Ruth leans over and shows Elin a simple new stitch. Her hands guide Ellen's with patient ease, their fingers brushing like branches in wind. It adds a little texture, Ruth says, makes the pattern yours. Elin tries. She fumbles once, then again, but the third time it holds a neat little twist nestled in the row. There, Ruth whispers, that's yours now. The room feels different after that. Not louder, not fuller, just deeper. As though each woman's presence has woven itself a little more tightly into the fabric of the night. As though something small and sacred has passed quietly from one hand to another. A ripple of understanding, a thread of belonging. Later, Ellen refills her cup with tea that has steeped to a mellow gold. She eats an apricot, slow and thoughtful, the sweetness lingering on her tongue. Around her, the yarn flows. The biscuits are fewer now. A hush settles like a shawl drawn gently over shoulders. Marge's needles pause mid-row. June leans back with a sigh. Even Mrs. Alder blinks longer, her hands momentarily still. The moment holds, not a pause, but a presence. Not an end, but a resting stitch. They breathe together, unknowing and knowing, each of them wrapped in yarn and quiet understanding. When Elin leaves, her scarf is soft against her neck and her fingers smell of wool. The air outside is sharp and fresh. She walks home, not quickly, but with the steady pace of someone who is learning how to make something not just with yarn, but with time and presence and care. Each step stitches her more deeply into the quiet fabric of her life, and beneath her coat, in her bag, the new dusky rose yarn rests a future unfurling, one row at a time. Chapter 6. The Unraveling Edge. The days stretch a little longer now, not with warmth yet, but with light. Late winter sun angles through windows, pale and golden, casting long shadows over snow that's begun to melt in uneven patches along the library steps. The air smells faintly of wet bark and thawing soil, not spring, but the suggestion of it. Elin notices this as she walks, her boots leaving damp prints on the path. There's still cold in the air, but it carries something softer now, the scent of thawing earth, the breath of something just beneath the surface beginning to stir. A crow calls from the top of a bare tree, its cry more echo than presence. A dog barks once, distantly, then quiet returns. She carries her knitting in both hands tonight. Its crown, the dusky rose piece, delicate and lopsided, now curls gently at the edges where her tension loosened. She wraps it in an old scarf, one she no longer wears, and tucks it into the crook of her arm like something too fragile for a bag. There's pride in the way she holds it, but also tenderness. Inside the library, the usual hush greets her. Familiar paths, familiar shelves, but tonight she lingers. She runs her fingers over the spine of a gardening book, pauses to smell a volume of poetry that smells like cedar. Her mind is full, not heavy, just full of threads, of texture, of tiny intentions held together by string. When she finally reaches the knitting room, it's empty, just for a moment. The lights are on, the teapot warms on its trivet. She takes her seat and sets her piece beside her, unwinding it slowly, and there, near the end of her last row, is a dropped stitch, small, almost invisible, but unraveling just a little, like the edge of a dream. One loop missed, one breath too quick. Her breath catches, she lifts the piece gently, examining the place where the yarn has pulled loose. It's delicate, like a secret thread barely holding. Her fingers hover, unsure whether to touch it or just look. The yarn sighs under its own weight. Ruth enters just then, her coat still on, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She sees Ellen's face and says nothing at first, just sets down her thermos and eases into the seat beside her. Her movements are always quiet, always certain. Aylin holds up the piece. I messed it up, she says quietly. Not quite sadness, not quite frustration, just the ache of something once held, slipping a little out of place. Ruth leans in. Let me see. Together, they study it. You can fix this, Ruth says softly. But even if you didn't, it would still be yours. Her hand hovers over Ellen's. Every pattern has a breath where it goes a little crooked. She doesn't reach immediately, she waits. Lets Aylin absorb the word. Aylin watches as Ruth gently loops the stitch back into place. It takes only a moment, a few calm movements, and then it holds again. The fabric breathes back into itself. The others begin to arrive, quiet footsteps, murmured greetings, the scent of orange peel and wool. June sets down a tin of shortbread. Marge unspools a brilliant orange skein with a smile. Mrs. Holder wears a new hat, slate blue with a tiny button detail. Someone refills the kettle without needing to ask. The evening resumes its rhythm. Knitting, tea, the soft clack of needles. Ellen returns to her row a little more carefully now, but not afraid. She feels the yarn beneath her fingers, feels its forgiveness, feels herself rejoining a line she didn't know she'd wandered from. Ruth passes her a biscuit wrapped in a napkin with tiny blue flowers. Still warm, she says. Ellen breaks it in half, takes a bite. It crumbles sweetly. The flavor fills her mouth like a memory she didn't know she'd missed. They don't talk about the stitch again. It doesn't need discussing. Some moments stay where they land, quiet and whole, folded into the fabric of the evening like a soft corner of a quilt. Because even the best patterns, she understands now, are made of places that almost came undone and then were gathered gently back together. A held breath, a second chance, a thread looped through time, not erased but softened. Outside, the wind has softened too. Ellen walks home with the piece still wrapped in its old scarf, held close again. And this time, she thinks not of the dropped stitch, but of the hands that helped it find its place again. The streetlights flicker gently above, and each step feels like a line in a pattern she's only just beginning to understand. Chapter 7. The Shared Thread. The following Thursday arrives with a soft grayness, the kind that carries no weight, only hush. It's a quiet day. From the beginning, clouds drift like pale fleece overhead, and the streets hold the damp of a morning mist that never quite lifts. Ellen wakes early. She takes her time, makes tea, watches the steam curl and disappear in the soft kitchen light. The scarf she's been working on, not the rose piece, but something new in pale green, sits folded beside her cup. She doesn't rush. It's a day for slowness. At the library, the warmth inside feels deeper somehow. Not hotter, just fuller. The kind of warmth that has nothing to prove. Dad holds its arms open quietly. The knitting room is already aglow. Ruth is there, of course, arranging mugs beside the kettle. Marge is in her chair, working with navy yarn this time. June has brought a quilted pouch of buttons shaped like moons. Mrs. Alder, with a gentle nod, offers Elin a square of dark chocolate wrapped in foil. Elin settles into her usual seat. She pulls out her green yarn and begins, her fingers finding the rhythm before her thoughts do. There's conversation tonight, more than usual, but still so. I remember when I learned to knit, June says. My grandmother showed me. I was impatient, and she never once hurried me. She used to keep her yarn in an old cookie tin, Marge adds. It smelled like ginger and wool. Ruth smiles. Mine kept it in a basket, same one I use now. Mrs. Alder doesn't speak, but she reaches into her bag and brings out a photo, black and white, worn at the corners. 4 women, seated in lawn chairs, needles in hand, laughter caught mid-air. Elin leans in. Is that you? Mrs. Alder nods once. Her eyes are distant and gentle. The photo passes around. Each woman holds it as if it's delicate, as if they're holding not just the paper, but the memory itself. When it reaches Ellen again, she lingers on the image. The softness of the clothes, the shape of the chairs, the way the yarn curls in their laps, like small promises being made. The evening winds on. Someone suggests that they each knit a square for a blanket, a shared one. There's a long pause, not hesitant, just full of quiet agreement. Ruth nods first. 1 square each, she says. Whatever you want, whatever feels like you. Elin's heart warms slowly, like water over a low flame. She looks down at the green yarn in her hand. Already, she knows what she'll do. The room that night is not louder, but it is more alive. There's a new thread now, winding invisibly from lap to lap. A thread that binds gently, like arms around shoulder. And when Elin walks home, her bag holds not just yarn, but purpose, something she is now part of, something that holds the shape of many hands, many evenings, many kinds of quiet, something that even if it unravels, will always have once been whole. Chapter 8. The blanket finished. Some weeks pass. The snow is gone now, and the trees begin to blush at their edges, pale green and early. The air carries birdsong again, not loud but insistent, as though the world is gently remembering how to breathe. At the library, the light arrives earlier through the windows. The kettle still steams, the biscuits still crumble, but the evenings feel longer now, not rushed, just more filled. The squares arrive, one by one. Marge's is bold, a wide stripe of yellow and deep sea blue. June's is soft lavender with tiny seed pearls nestled in the stitches. Mrs. Alder's is precise and tight slate grey, with an elegant diamond in the center. Ruth's is warm brown and pink, like faded roses pressed in an old book. Ellen's is green, the same soft yarn she's been working with, pale and steady. Her square is simple, but she's added a border, a row of small loops that hold together one after the other. She doesn't say what it means. She doesn't need to. On the evening the blanket is assembled, no one rushes. The pieces are laid out across the low table, carefully aligned. Ruth threads a wide-eyed needle and begins to join them with a gentle overhand stitch. They take turns. No one leads. No one speaks too much. Elin watches as the colors find one another, the rose beside the slate, the yellow holding hands with green. The blanket grows, quiet and whole. It is finished just after dusk. Ruth lifts it with both hands. For a moment, no one says anything. It is not grand, not flawless, but it is beautiful, made of evenings and stories and the stillness between sentences. Elin runs her hand over it, her fingers catching on the loops of her own square. She smiles. Where will it go? She asks. Ruth considers. Nowhere, really, she says. It stays here, like us, and so it does, folded gently, placed over the back of the old couch by the window, a quiet thing, a soft presence, a reminder that something shared, even slowly, even silently, can become something that whole. That night, Elin lingers. She doesn't knit. She just sits, her hands in her lap, watching the blanket rest under lamplight. The room hums with memory, with rhythm, with comfort. And outside, the season continues turning, but inside, something has settled,